Election night 2024 was historic for many reasons that we have covered and we will continue to cover on this show. But one of the great shocks of them all, even to someone like me who has observed and participated in those trends for the better part of a decade, is how many of you spent election night. It used to be really not that long ago. Election night was synonymous with cable news. It was one of the few monopolies that they had left. They had the data, they have the analysts, they have the pull to project and to call races. I'd say even a decade ago, they had a near total monopoly on all of it, despite the rise of social media. But within the last decade, it has almost flipped completely. And even I was shocked at the statistics that came out showing how precipitous the drop in ratings for cable news networks on election 2024 was. Nielsen data released after the election shows that some 42 million Americans tuned in to watch election night coverage last Tuesday. That is a full 25% drop from 4 years prior. Internalize that. 25% drop in just 4 years for literally the most important night in cable news history. An election where more than 100 million people voted and where more than half of them were not watching cable television. Juxtapose that with the sheer numbers that we were talking about in terms of people who are consuming new media. A new Wall Street Journal analysis finds that nearly 47% of US adults have now listened to a podcast in the last month of 2024, with hockey stick growth growing every single year since 2010. What's even more astonishing are the numbers with Americans below the age of 54. That same analysis finds that more than 50% of Americans below the age of 54 regularly consume podcasts, with a slightly higher share of men than women. Compare that with the lightning growth with the median age of cable TV. On MSNBC, the median age is 70. On Fox, it's 69. On CNN, it's 68. So remember that. The median age, that's the median, which means there's a group of 80 and 90-year-olds who are also watching their fair share of cable TV. All of this data even tracks what we are doing here. Election night was our biggest ever live stream, viewers, downloads, and we are just a small slice of a pie that includes dozens of independent shows out there, all of whom, at least that I've spoken to, they all had major record ratings and nights after the election. This is incredibly important for a number of reasons. One is it validates a central bet that the Trump campaign made about 3 months ago to go on as many podcasts as possible to reach as many people as possible, especially for young men, and hope that they drive out to vote. There was a lot of discussion around this, but on the other side of this election, we can say confidently it worked. Trump won more than voters under the age of 30 than any Republican candidate since 2008. But the headline is not just that. He blew Kamala Harris out with young men under the age of 30. It's also that he improved his vote margin significantly with young women. Here too, there are some very interesting explanations. It's not just podcasts that young people are consuming, but also TikTok, Instagram, and short-form content. Trump racked up an astonishing 14.3 million followers on TikTok versus Kamala Harris only had 9.3 million. And the same journal analysis finds that some 40% of Americans under the age of 30 use TikTok as a regular source of news, especially young women. In basically every way across all platforms, Trump dominated new media. It's not an accident that it's also the same election where he won the popular vote for the first time. It is not an accident that it's the same election where he won a majority of Latino men and dramatically improved his margins with young black men. There are almost no demographic groups in the United States that did not shift towards Donald Trump. So I will end with a recommendation then to the Trump White House. The biggest mistake that you can make is to fall into the traditions of Washington. As I described in detail here in a post on Twitter, the entire White House Correspondents Association is a cartel. It is designed to keep out new entrants, not just conservatives, but people like our very own Ryan Grimm. They run the credentialing process, the seating chart, and they have in place a million rules to stop new media from coming in. The Trump White House actually owes its win to new media in a way that nobody has before, and to the internet, unlike any candidate since Barack Obama. So it is vital they shake things up. Do away with the current White House press briefing as we know it. Seats in the room should be rotated. Preference should be given actually to those with audience rather than the aging television networks who have preference for traditions that go back to the 1980s. Left and right-wing journalists of all stripes and audience should be invited, and the briefing itself should have the pace of a longer YouTube video rather than the current cable TV style food fight debate that those people turn it into. This will require a lot of work, and it will piss off the traditional press royally. But all the data I have presented here makes the case that to not do so would actually be against the interests of the Trump White White House. But it would also be against a disservice to the American people. As traditional media is losing its relevance and its viewership, it is imperative for the People's House to actually meet Americans where they are at. And we can say confidently, they're definitely not on mainstream media, at least not anymore. I think it's crazy, Krystal.
Hey guys, obviously I had a lot of thoughts on what Saagar had to say there. So if you want to see my thoughts on this monologue and every other Saagar monologue, make sure you subscribe at breakingpoints.com.